Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, recording episode. I won't even try anymore. 260 something. I can never keep track. And today with me, I have, and of course, I did not ask you how to pronounce your name because I am really bad at remembering to do that.
Yes.
Hunter Pechin. How do you say?
Pechin, close.
Pechin, okay.
Close.
Okay, Hunter Pechin with Foresight. Although today we've had a bunch of Foresight people. We had Brad come and talk about career. Then we had Emilio right? Actually come and talk about Foresight. Mm-hmm. And today, again, we're going back to a career conversation, although a very different career conversation to the one that we had with Brett, because you don't think of yourself as an insurance person.
Well, very new to insurance.
Very new to insurance. So 6 months in insurance, the last six months now with Foresight. So yeah, let's kind of go over how on earth you ended up falling into insurance. How Emilio roped you into Foresight. Now,
right.
So looking at your LinkedIn, so your academic background, you've got a degree in poli-sci from Berkeley. I used to live. I didn't go to Berkeley, but we lived in Berkeley for a year.
Nice.
So I love the area. So degree in poli-sci from Berkeley. What was the plan originally?
I mean, the plan originally was I was an idealistic young kid who wanted to go, save the world or change the world or something.
You went to the right place. I was going to say Berkeley,
right?
The country's most politically active university.
It's very on brand for Berkeley.
Exactly.
So I was a political science major and I wanted to go to Washington, which I did. My last year in college, actually, there's a program that the University of California system as a whole does where you can essentially study abroad in Washington, D.C. So I spent a semester in Washington, kind of learned a little bit more about the city there, got an opportunity to work there and move there after college, and lived and worked in Washington, actually in fundraising for a think tank, sort of not on the Hill, but sort of on the periphery of the Hill and all of the kind of policy making for 6 years. So that was actually the beginning of my career, well before I even knew what workers' compensation was.
So that's the Woodrow Wilson Center.
That's right, the Woodrow Wilson Center. Yeah.
Okay, so Woodrow Wilson, one of the ex-presidents, and what kind of one of the think tanks, or is that what it is? So
that's a fair characterization.
What is their focus, and what was your focus within what they do?
Well, the Woodrow Wilson Center is staunchly like a nonpartisan think tank. And the whole idea is to try to if you bring enough diverse voices together, you would get better thought, better policy, better ideas, better connections. It's perhaps sadly somewhat of an antiquated concept in Washington that is so polarized and so partisan. But
I was gonna say like the word think tank for the most part means either Koch brothers financed extreme right or the precise opposite, right?
You've got
right.
I don't know, the American Enterprise Institute and Heritage on the right. You've got like Brookings Institution and others on the left, and they're kind of duking it out and sort of sending out their policy papers.
It appears that there's nothing in the middle, or that was my
there's not much in the middle, but we tried, we tried and still try. The Woodrow Wilson Center is still a vibrant organization. But it's sometimes it did feel like we were fighting the good fight and against long odds.
Okay, and so it looks like the last couple of years you were in the fundraising arm.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I did there. Was I worked in fundraising.
The whole time you were in fundraising.
In fundraising, yeah. So there's an overlap. Like in some ways, I was in kind of a marketing and almost like business development way, or a role, though I didn't necessarily know or think of those more business centric terms at the time. But we did a lot of corporate relations and fundraising from corporations. We did a lot of event fundraising. So we would travel into different cities across the country and put on sort of galas and events, acknowledging and celebrating business leaders and political leaders, and people would buy tickets and tables to attend those events. It was exciting. I mean, we raised a lot of money that were that was unrestricted funds, which is the most valuable for a nonprofit, because unrestricted funds you can use to pay the electricity bill, or you can use to, further your mission, but you can use it in whatever way you need.
Oh, so most grants or whatever, the most money that comes into a nonprofit has restricted uses.
Yeah, a lot of times, yeah. It's either I would like to give this, hi, I'm Tony Cañas, and I'm giving this donation to this organization, but I want it to specifically focus on Latin American studies or whatever. Whereas we were raising money that could be used unrestricted. So that was kind of cool to be part of that. And I feel like I got my marketing, sales chops. In some ways.
Fundraising. That's serious. That's serious marketing.
Yeah.
That's serious. But like if I were running an agency, I'd be happy to hire somebody that did fundraising to sell, because right before you're asking money for nothing, or money to change the world.
Why don't you give us, you'll get a tax break, but pretty much you're just giving it to us.
so at least in insurance, we're giving you I guess same story. We're giving you a promise, but the promise is specific to you, and it has a contract to it.
There's a contract. There is a contract. Yeah.
Okay. So 6 years at the Woodrow Wilson Center. So why leave? The siren call of insurance was to why leave? That seems like a really good job.
I mean, workers' compensation was just too sexy. I knew I needed to get there.
I should have a lie or wrong answer buzzer for the show for people are clearly lying. So what was that? Because you decided to go back to school for your master's, or why?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just a mix of, that was my first stop in my career. That was the first 6 years fresh out of college, and so perhaps there was still a little bit of learning what I wanted to do long term, or just kind of what was out there. And I think like the less happy side of it is like the push, right? I think living and working in DC for 6 years is I got almost a little disillusioned. The idealistic kid coming out of college, I was like, oh, actually, like DC's tough. Like there's, things don't get done the way you think they will or should or at all. And so I think I started to, I don't know, just become a little disillusioned in that manner. But then the pull side of it was, because I was in fundraising and I was working with people in the corporate world, I was working with people in the business world, I became more and more intrigued by that and thought, even there's still some of that idealism or idealistic sort of sense that could be in there, because businesses are changing the world, right? Businesses are doing things that are really good or really making an impact too. So there was still that Berkeley idealistic kid. It was just kind of like, my focus was shifting. And because of my fundraising background, I thought marketing was probably the right direction for me to enter business. So that's when I started looking for the best way to do that, and landed on grad school as kind of a springboard in there. Mm-hmm. And then went to grad school next.
Okay, so you end up at VCU in Richmond, which I'm very familiar with because of the risk management program.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you graduated with a master's in creative brand management at 4.0 GPA, so fantastic.
Oh man, do I have that on there? That's embarrassing.
What I tell people in career advice, when they call in for career advice, is if the GPA is above a 3.4, 3.5, including. Right. So you're following the advice. Throw it in there. Can't blame you. Yeah. So yeah, you also have the undergrad 3.6. So either way, they both qualify to be listed.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'd forgotten that I put that on there a long time ago. But
no worries. My advice is, as long as it's over a 3.4, do keep them in there.
All right. I'm keeping them on.
So you do an internship. Is it while you're doing the master's that you do the internship at Chobani?
Yeah. I was really interested in natural foods, just sort of personally from a, I don't know, natural foods perspective. And I got the opportunity to intern with Chobani that summer in between the 2 years of the 2-year grad program. And it was 2012. So Chobani was in hyper growth mode. Chobani's a Greek yogurt maker, if those who are listening are unfamiliar. And it was just taking off at that time.
So interestingly, that wasn't a marketing internship. It was innovation and new ventures.
It was innovation and new ventures, which kind of, especially in the CPG world, the consumer packaged goods world, overlaps a lot of times with marketing. The person who was leading that division was sort of an ex-marketer or had a marketing background. And so it was really developed, it was really doing like customer research and market research and competitor research to understand
all that's
trends.
marketing.
Yeah, and what flavors, what products are we going to launch next, and how are we going to initially position and market them?
Okay, so a little bit of packaged goods, and then you graduate. Don't go back to Chobani, but you do stay in kind of the health food side.
Yeah. I was thinking I would go back to Chobani, and then I was also I was looking at an opportunity at Target at the retailer in their kind of food division, but I was lured into the startup world by Health Warrior, which was at that point kind of a baby startup, adventure backed, and happened to be based in Richmond in the natural food space.
So I'm Target's a great company, but they're Minneapolis, Minnesota based. So I am curious whether like you went to interview in Minneapolis in January.
I went to Minneapolis.
Humans live here.
I mean, look at me. I'd fit right in Minneapolis, right? Like,
oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Like I went to Minneapolis and we interviewed. Though it was funny. It was June, and we got there and it was sunny. It was 72. It was gorgeous. It was like,
Minneapolis is wonderful in the summer. In the summer,
right? Yeah, like it was funny. So it was like, oh, okay, well, but then you have to walk through the tunnels downtown. There's like bridges that connect the buildings downtown. So you're sheltered from the cold in the winter. So you're like, even though it's beautiful outside, I can see what they're prepared for.
And coming from California and Virginia, like this, like warm areas.
Yeah. Virginia's pretty mild, and California is certainly warm. So I had that in the back of my mind, but I thought I could probably tough it out. And Minneapolis is a cool city, but I was just excited by the idea of like kind of getting in on the ground floor and building something.
Okay, so you spend almost 5 years at Health Warrior. That's almost that's an impressively long time at a startup.
It is. I was the first marketing hire, and I think I was the 5th or 6th employee. We had a small team at the beginning. We were kind of crammed into a little office in Richmond with a few sales folks in bigger cities. And we grew fast, and we raised more money, and we went through through Series C, and with some venture-backed funds. We got into Target. We were distributed through Target and through Whole Foods across the country, and Amazon and e-commerce was exploding, and we blew up with that. And the interesting thing about the food industry that I then learned as I now am in the insurance industry that is a parallel is that in the food industry, you have manufacturers, you have brands like Health Warrior, and then they don't sell directly to the person who buys and eats the nutrition bar. In this case, of course, they sell to retailers, but even before that, they sell to distributors who then put them on trucks and bring them and sell them to retailers who then sell to consumers. And you might even have some brokers in between who are helping manage shelf space and get you into retailers and all sorts of things. So it was interesting as going into the commercial insurance space, the P&C space. I remember talking with some of my now colleagues, and it was like, oh yeah, our main audience right now are brokers, and all commercial insurance is sold through brokers. And I started talking about, oh yeah, like I'm very familiar with that model, and here's how we approached it in the food industry, and we needed to make sure to get them on board, and sales collateral and some of that B2B marketing was just as important as the end marketing. So it was just interesting to see how some of that experience ties together in otherwise very different industries.
That is very interesting, especially because if there's one thing we're guilty of in insurance, is this idea of insurance is so different that you need to have insurance experience to do it. And now the Insurtechs don't have that problem. The Insurtechs for a long time had the opposite problem, where like tech is all they wanted. They've gotten a lot better about it. But in the traditional carriers, unless you're starting at the entry level, like, holy crap, there's this like pervasive idea that unless you've done it with an insurance, it doesn't count. Right. I mean, in insurance recruiting, and I only do consultants, but my teammates in permanent staffing like are always fighting this. The carriers, all they want is people who have done this exact same thing for another insurance company before. It's very hard to convince them.
Started from undergrad and kind of grown
exactly.
up.
It's very hard to convince them to look beyond insurance. So it is good to hear how there are
maybe I'm not an underwriter. I mean, and obviously there is a lot of training and there's a lot of experience that can go into that. So maybe in some of those niche underwriting roles, it would make sense. But
yeah, there are areas where it does.
Yeah.
So and then you have a stop at Capital One, right?
That's right.
So that, I mean, maybe not as bad as Bank of America or Wells Fargo, but going from a health startup
It's
to
true.
a big bank.
It's true.
Right?
It's true. It was a big job.
What were the oil companies not hiring? Like, it's a radical change, is what I would try to say. Like the depth of corporate America.
Yeah, no,
So,
it was an interesting move, and I mean that's why it's a stint, because I think I got there and I was like, oh, you know what, this isn't for me. But we'd grown Health Warrior significantly. We didn't quite achieve that kind of startup takeoff in terms of ride off into the sunset or rocket to the moon.
Exponential Uber,
like the exponential Uber. We did well, and so many startups, especially in that space, just die off after a year or two. So I think we can look back with pride with what we did. Health Warrior was eventually sold to Pepsi, but it was a matter of
that's an exit. That, I mean, that's a
it was an exit. It was an exit. It wasn't a big exit, but it was an exit that we could be proud of, and the brand does live on under the auspices of Pepsi, so that's cool. But I think I was a little, maybe there's a trend here where I was like, I was in DC and I loved it, but then I was like a little disillusioned and I was ready to try something else. I was excited about business. I was in natural foods and I loved it, but then I was like, oh my God, I don't want to think about shelf space anymore in warehouses, and there's something a little bit more abstract or a little bit more intangible. And software is eating the world, tech is eating the world. I started to be drawn in that direction. So I sort of made another shift in that direction, staying in business and staying in marketing, but an industry shift. And so I went from food to finance and from small to big, and got the opportunity to work at Capital One, which was great in that I learned a ton about tech and about finance and about corporate America. But I was also like, this isn't that fun. I don't know if I love corporate America. So, I want to work with the small guys again.
So then you go independent as a consultant.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So I've learned a lot. Got the Berkeley degree has a very, very nice brand name to it. Right. Great university. VCU, I'm familiar with VCU mostly as a risk management school. I don't know if they're a big name within the Mid-Atlantic region.
Yeah.
But so you've got great marketing experience at this point, both big company and startup, and this experience. You're like, okay, I'm gonna go and do some consulting.
Yeah. I had that breadth, and I just wanted to, I don't know, I kind of wanted to figure out what was next on sort of my own pace, or and just say like, all right, this isn't really what I want to do, or this isn't really where I want to be. And I remember talking to my wife, I was like, hey, I kind of want to just like hang out my shingle and be like a consultant. I think I can work with brands and work with smaller companies. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. If it doesn't work, I'll just go get a job.
It's a big jump while you're young.
Just go get a job if it doesn't work,
It's becoming an intern, becoming a consultant, right, independent early on, unless you came from like McKinsey or Deloitte, one of the big consulting companies. It's a big jump.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't going to become a consultant and go consult for big Fortune 500 companies right off the bat necessarily. Like, I wanted to work with smaller companies and venture-backed high growth companies, but I want to work with smaller companies. So I felt like I had realistic expectations, but I was interested in making it work. And then, I don't know, it felt good to be like confident in yourself and just like jump into it. And so I started consulting with a handful of different companies, but in the tech space. I worked a lot with WorkPath, which is a health tech that was eventually acquired by Roe, which is the men's health company that now expanded into women's health and other things based up in New York. That was pretty cool. I got to work with the WorkPath team, which is very briefly a company that facilitates remote phlebotomy, blood draws. So blood draws in people's homes, blood draws in places other than doctors' offices and hospitals. Which can be really helpful for clinical trials. It can be helpful actually for life insurance tests. It can be helpful for a lot of different applications. And they eventually got purchased by Roe. So that was kind of cool. It's like sort of a crash course in a new industry and in tech, because I was really helping them kind of drive their marketing and some of their strategy around growth. I worked some with a fintech with Alloy, which is a company that helps banks digitize and prevent fraud. And then I started working also with Foresight, which is the commercial insurance company, and Insurtech.
So how did you connect with Foresight? Like their California headquarters, they're remote first, but their California headquarters and slowly moving east, and you're all the way in Virginia. How did you happen to connect with Foresight? And they've only been around for a couple of years, so you connected with them very early on. So what was that, random luck or?
I mean, a little bit. I guess it's kind of one of those, like, you sort of, you know, make your own luck. Like I was networking, and I was trying to be proactive about just talking with people in general who are doing interesting things. And I had jumped onto there's a Slack channel called Superpath that's in the marketing space, that's focused on content marketing and digital marketing. And I had been on there, and my now colleague Lindsay had just posted something that said, oh, you know, we're looking for someone to help us with marketing, basically, and specifically kind of like supporting our growing sales team, or our business development team. And, you know, so some things, like I said, that had sort of sounded similar to some stuff I had done at Health Warrior. And I had some space in my schedule. So I was just like, oh, I'm interested. Like, I just sort of raised my hand. Zoom call with David, the CEO, Zoom call with a couple of other people. They brought me on as a part-time consultant. My hours continued to grow and grow and grow. The company was raising money and said, you know, we want to bring you on full time. And I said, you know, I'm interested. I'm enjoying working with you guys. So it was sort of by luck. It was sort of random. Like I was just in different places and heard about it. And then I guess just tried to make the most of it.
So once you get the offer we want to bring you on, you're like, you know, I like working with you guys. I have other clients that are not insurance. Do I really want to go full time with an insurance? Did that give you pause at all? Like because we get that a lot. We get a lot. Like we have and this is an Insurtech, so it's better. But as an industry, the insurance industry has this undeniable perception, or well-documented perception of the your old friend from high school who the only time you ever hear from him is because he's trying to sell you life insurance, this car salesman, or this fly-by-night, like we never actually pay claims reputation, both very undeserved, but basically when it comes to industries that people want to work in, we're not great at marketing ourselves. So did it give you pause, or were you so impressed with the team that it just didn't register as a?
You know, I think it would have, because I think I probably would have been guilty of having that perception about the insurance industry as a whole in general. And, you know, it's funny too, because as an independent contractor, I bought long-term disability insurance, a policy for myself. And that was like annoying.
It was a painful process.
It was a painful process. And it was just like, you know, and they asked me a lot of questions, and I was like, look, I'm trying to give you my money. You know, like,
yeah, no, we
understand they need to do their vetting, but I'm like, come on, you know?
No, it like, we are hard to do business with in a lot of ways. Like the traditional insurance world. I was working at Nationwide when I bought a scooter, like a small motorcycle, right? And I wanted to insure it with Nationwide with the rest of my stuff.
I see you on like a Vespa with your hair.
It's like a Vespa. It was very much a Vespa. And I wanted to you know, I need to get insurance for it. I already have my auto and my renters with Nationwide. I go to the website. This was a good 5 or 6 years ago, and I quote it, and I get to the end of the quote, and to actually buy it, you have to call the 800 number. No. Like I ended up going to Progressive, like it was just too painful. Or my very good friend Nick Lamparelli runs an Insurtech, and to buy E&O, like errors and omissions coverage for the company, which is technically a managing general agency, had to print out the forms and fill them by hand. Like you couldn't even do a fillable PDF.
Yeah. If you send a fillable PDF, they would have rejected it. You know,
it's just the traditional insurance world. We can be painful to work with. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I think that was my perception too. I didn't necessarily have a different perception. I think it's because I started working with them, you know, piecemeal, and grew and learned more about them as I did. And I learned two things. I mean, I learned one, that it's Insurtech, right? So it's a little bit different than traditional insurance, and there's that tech focus. And two, like, as you probably picked up as a theme, like I kind of like the whole purpose oriented. I like to be thinking that I'm doing something that's at least generally making a positive dent in the world. Perhaps Capital One was the exception, but with natural foods and with fundraising for a think tank and in insurance, it's like, here we are with Foresight, and we have a risk management, our technology, our safety technology that, is proven to help make job sites safer. And another thing that maybe our mutual contact or friend Caribou Honig, who's in the insurance space as an investor and conference organizer, he told me at one point, he was like, oh, you're getting into insurance. He's like, insurance is the industry that you can always actually feel good about. I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, because like most people are underinsured, right? Like insurance is just generally a positive thing. They need more coverage. They need more insurance for all of the crazy things that can happen in this world. There's nothing that you're like, yes, obviously if you're being fraudulent, that's one thing, but like it's an unalloyed good really once they have it. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. So,
only 6 months in the industry, and you've already understood what we have trouble getting the younger crowd to understand. And in fact, I have spent a lot of time trying to like hammer this message into the leadership that with the younger generation, and I'm an older millennial. I'm guessing you're probably around my age too, so you're probably.
I like to call myself an elder millennial. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from December '82, so like right on that edge.
July '83. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. I figured that you were an elder millennial, exactly. And I spent a lot of time trying to get the industry to understand that for millennials, yeah, we need to pay our student loans, but we want to work for an industry with a mission, with a positive mission. An industry does good in the world, and we do. That's the advantage. Ultimately, every job in insurance ultimately is helping somebody get back on their feet when something goes wrong, whether it's at work, like you guys at or trying to prevent you getting injured at work, or whether it's your home or your business or your car. We're here to help you get back on your feet when something goes wrong. Unfortunately, most entry-level roles within the industry are a cog within that machine, and if we don't give that cog good visibility as to the final product, but the mission of the industry is there. So I agree with you completely. I love that.
It's a pretty noble one. Yeah, and
it's such a stable industry.
Also true.
It's a wonderful industry. So now 6 months at Foresight. So you've gotten a look at the Insurtech world, which I'm sure by now you've realized is ginormous and has literally thousands of players. And at the same time, you've probably had to deal somewhat with traditional insurance players in one way or another. Although you guys are selling your own insurance rather than trying to sell a tool to an Insurtech. But I'm curious, what are the biggest lessons from your prior life that have really helped in your current life in insurance?
Yeah.
And by the way, I never, for the audience, I never have like prepared questions, and in fact sometimes guests ask for those. Hunter didn't, but sometimes guests ask for those, and I'm like, oh, it's just very conversational. So he was not prepared for this.
I watched a couple of it. I watched Emilio and stuff, and I was just like, oh, it's more free-flowing conversation.
It's very free-flowing.
What are the lessons that from the past lives that can apply here? I mean, I think I guess the first one that comes to mind is that sort of structure of like, at least in commercial insurance, of provider to broker to insured, and making sure that you're sort of marketing to both, building those relationships with brokers and making sure that their needs are met, and they're hearing what they need to hear, as well as setting up the product ultimately for the insured success and making sure that you're marketing to them. And I think that's one piece. Another piece I think that's important, especially for insurtechs and for younger companies and for growth companies, and maybe even for big companies too, just in sort of a different level in their newer initiatives, is focus. I think something that we did at Health Warrior, that if I could go back in time and sort of reshift us or redirect us a little bit, is we tried to do it all at once. We try, if we could get national distribution in a retailer, again, that was a food brand. If we could get national distribution, go for it, sign the contract, go, promise the shipment. If we were opening up a new state, get a salesperson up there, just go, go, go. And I think that we sometimes got out ahead of our skis a little bit in that the country is a huge country, and especially in insurance where regulations vary from state to state, it's hard to nail everything at once. And so one of the things that's good about Foresight actually right now is we are authorized only in 8 states. In 8 states, we're focusing on growing and expanding that footprint, but at the same time, it's allowed us to go deep on some of these early states and not like try to boil the ocean, as I've heard people say. So I think that's a lesson that I've seen sort of echoed here again.
What's been most surprising about the insurance or Insurtech world?
What's most surprising is I think what's interesting is every business, every industry is relationship driven, and relationships are important. But insurance is especially commercial insurance,
radically important.
It's relationships are all right. Like, I mean, yes, you have to have a great product. Yes, you have to have a good price. Yes, you have to all of these things. But those are table stakes, and then you have to have the relationship, which maybe also goes back to focus, because we need to nurture and build those relationships, make sure they're strong. It's not just spray and pray, So I think that's been, maybe that's not surprising, but just how important and crucial that is noteworthy.
This is a relationship business. It will always be. And even though we're finally bringing our technology to the late 90s and early 2000s levels, thanks to the Insurtech revolution, the relationships are going to continue to be important.
And yeah, I agree. They always will be. Like tech will streamline things, but the relationships.
It is very interesting to hear that coming from somebody whose entire insurance experience has been within Insurtech. But I'm not surprised that like relationships are crucial in our industry. It's hard to explain just how crucial. Absolutely. That was very, very, very good. And finally, because of insurance, because of how bad we are at convincing kids to go to school for insurance early on, and number 2, because there's not enough insurance programs. There's only like 70 RMI programs. Most of them are not even a whole major program. And out of 3,000 or 4,000 schools in the US, literally only 70 some programs. So because of that, the majority of people coming into insurance have degrees in other things, in non-pre-professional type things. And political science is one of those. In fact, I get so many.
I'm in good company.
Yeah, exactly. I get so many career chats, calls coming in with degrees in communications, philosophy, psychology, political science, poli-sci. So for the poli-sci kids in the future, why should they consider a career in the insurance space or Insurtech space? Because they definitely don't during school.
There's a number of reasons, I think, like, and this is coming from somebody who didn't know a lot about insurance at that age, but I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, I think one is stability. Like you said, it's a very mature and therefore stable industry. So there's
recession proof.
Recession proof and a lot of opportunity and a lot of different players, from the Insurtechs to the incumbents. So there is a practical element there of stability. And then I think number 2 would be, but that's not super sexy, especially when you're young. But number 2 would be,
well, interestingly, for the millennials, it's not, because we're dreamers. We grew up in a time of
right.
Economic good years,
right.
Economic growth.
Right.
But for the Gen Zers, the kids born after 95 who have grown during a time of great uncertainty, many of them are desperate for stability.
I've read that, like in the sort of generalizations.
So anyway, like, stability and before I rudely interrupted, what was the other thing?
Stability. And I think what else would attract somebody to insurance would be, I think insurance is a broad umbrella, right? So there's a lot of different opportunities within insurance. It's probably the variety and the breadth. I mean, you can have, let's say you're a more sort of extroverted kind of communications minded person, like we just talked about relationships, business development or being a broker or producer is perfect. For the more analytical minded, like it's underwriting, like, and then on the Insurtech side, I mean, I'm in kind of a marketing and operations hybrid role, and I'm helping to sort of shape the product, and I'm helping to, shape the messaging. And then there's just a lot of different directions you can go in. And I think over time, you could even sort of adapt and evolve to new roles if that was of interest to you too, which I think is cool personally, because I like learning things in new industries.
You will never run out of stuff to learn within insurance, and you will never run out of new types of roles to try.
Yes, exactly.
It really, absolutely 100% agreed. Awesome.
And it's international, right? I mean, there's insurance everywhere.
So very interesting. That's a very good point. So I grew up at Nationwide, and Nationwide is nationwide, but it's there's not a lot of international opportunities at Nationwide. Then I went to Liberty. Liberty had some. Then I spent a little time at Munich Re. Munich Re had a lot, although my side didn't. But international, but insurance overall is very international. You're 100% correct. Now, because of the way that it's regulated, it's right. It's hard to grow even to the national level because of how we regulate it. It's very hard to right, compared to like developing an app that goes viral in multiple countries.
Right.
It'll take you decades to get to like 10 different countries within insurance. But yes, it does exist all over the world in different levels of development. And there are opportunities, definitely. London, Bermuda, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Dubai are all big insurance hubs.
I would imagine like Munich and Geneva or somewhere.
Those are big reinsurance hubs.
Munich Re and Swiss Re.
Yeah, big reinsurance hubs.
Yeah.
So great chatting with you today. Looking forward to see Foresight continue to grow, and you continue to grow within the industry. Hopefully hopefully you don't grow disillusioned with insurance and Insurtech like you did prior with other areas. But it's definitely very interesting to have the conversation with people who don't have traditional insurance backgrounds. And for the listeners, if you have had an interesting insurance or Insurtech career, love to have you. Come send me a message and let's have a career conversation. Interestingly, this podcast was created for career conversations. And 260 episodes or 250 some episodes later, 90+% of episodes we do are about Insurtech, not about careers, because the problem is that carriers tend to be so conservative that carrier side people can't get permission to come on the podcast. So we end up doing Insurtech interviews because the Insurtechs are a lot easier to deal with when it comes to getting permission to come on the podcast. So thank you so much for your time. Great chatting with you today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tony. And hopefully we've convinced one or two young people to join the industry.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. See you, Tony.